her. Sounds like two Ronnies, doesn't it? Today our theme is all about power. And I want to challenge the common perception of power that I can only be powerful if I make you less powerful. Mm. That my power is a question of status and dominion over you. Mm-hmm. It's my belief that our personal power is something that we choose to own or give away.
Yes.
And many people in a whole range of situations give their power to other people.
Yeah.
And as a result, they lose that opportunity to have the sense of wholeness and the capacity to use all of their resources in terms of helping them have a great quality of life and also then in helping others.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So I think it would be quite useful if I start off by talking about the sort of situations where I believe we hand over our power.
Yeah.
Because I think through that, it will make it clear. And if you're listening to this, and welcome those to those who listening to this, I want you to think about these common patterns of behaviour and how often you indulge in those. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because I think all of us, to some extent, will indulge in practices which actually diminish our power.
Yes.
And the more we're aware, the more we can do something about it.
Yeah.
Hence this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I believe you hand over your power to someone when you allow them to take charge of your emotional state.
Yes.
So he makes me angry or unhappy. She makes me feel small.
Yes.
She makes me feel unworthy.
Mm.
Any time that you allow the other person to decide on your emotional state,
yes,
it's as clear as handing this mug over to you and saying, here you are,
okay,
here's my power, you take it.
Okay, thank you.
We are responsible for our power.
Yes.
And
have your power back.
Thank you very much. If only it was that easy. Our emotional state, how we feel, is very much down to us.
Do you know, I can remember the exact moment in my life when that concept was first introduced to me. Because certainly my experience is you're not genuinely made aware of the fact that it is a choice to have a certain emotional reaction. And actually, funnily enough, because I'm wearing yellow, it was on a course where the only two things I can remember about this course, this leadership or personal development course, was that the instructor said, you'll probably only remember one of these things from the course, and that is that I'm wearing yellow socks, and he showed us the yellow socks. And I do remember that yellow. But the other thing I do remember is that he very clearly stated that your emotional state is absolutely under your domain and your control. And you do not get angry by other people. They do not have that control over you. You choose to be angry.
It's an interesting concept because for so many people, I mean, those who are in unhappy relationships, those who in their work situations get bound up by dealing with the public,
yes,
or because their boss is being unreasonable,
yes,
you have that choice, but only if you are conscious of the fact that you have a choice.
Yes. Now you see, I say to pretty much everybody I ever sort of interact with, but especially my children, when my daughter says, "Oh, she made me this and he made me that," and I say, "No, you chose to have that reaction to them. There were other choices that you had, but you are making a choice." And they do argue against it.
They find it very difficult.
Most of society, I think, does find it difficult to accept that.
A lot of grown-ups are just big children, aren't they?
Yes.
In fact, we're all big children in some way or another.
Yeah.
But I think of all of the times that I've met people, I've worked with people whose whole life is coloured by how somebody else's mood. Mm. I'm going to watch and see how they are, and that will determine how I'm going to feel. Mm. And if you do that, then the whole of your emotional state is held to ransom.
Because when you consider sort of like extreme power plays, so abusive relationships where one or other or both of the partners are effectively in a constant power struggle, then it has in the past been quite controversial to say that a woman, because let's face it tends to be the vast majority of abusive relationships tend to be that the man is domineering the woman.
Yes.
I don't know entirely 100%, obviously, but the woman colludes in the continuation of physical abuse and so on, and that can be obviously very hard to hear for certain people who suffer it, because they don't like to think that they are also helping. But there is this scenario where, when you're given a very clear indication by somebody, but because of their behaviour, that they have an issue, a value, or whatever you want to call it, but you're given a very clear indication of this is what they think is acceptable on some level, and you remain, I'm stating a scenario where I'm assuming you don't think that that is acceptable, but you remain, then by necessity, some people would say, you are helping create this scenario. And I would sort of agree with that.
Maybe not create it, but in a sense sustain it.
Yes.
And that's true in a whole range of situations. If you are living with somebody who's an alcoholic,
yes,
or an addict of any sort,
yes,
it's very easy to get drawn into colluding with that person.
Yes.
I'd like to bring it back, because my second scenario, which follows on from the first, is that of where people are bullied.
Yeah.
It's my belief that bullies of any sort look for those who show the vulnerability, and vulnerability in the sense of that they will allow themselves to be dominated.
Yes.
And for me, vulnerability has a whole range of meanings. But in this context, I'm talking about in the playground, you will watch children, they'll only pick on those children who lack confidence, who aren't going to stand up for themselves. And by that, I do not mean physically thump somebody else, but actually who have a real strong sense of who they are. Bullies don't go for those. And it's my belief that bullies are hurting, and that they get a sense of transitory power when they overpower someone else.
Yes.
But because they don't feel good about themselves, it's only ever transitory. It doesn't last, so they need to do it again and again and again. And actually then they feel worse about themselves. So the bullying gets more and more extreme in order to get that hit for that moment of feeling, I feel powerful because I've made somebody else feel weak. And
it is often the case, isn't it, that the bullied, the abused, often go on to do exactly what they suffered. And an element
the cycle
of that,
goes on and on.
Yeah, an element of that is, it's a learned behaviour that it can, to a greater or lesser extent, be justified, in inverted commas, as being their experience of this of life on this earth. They didn't experience another way, so it's hard for them to move out of that comfort zone.
It's one of the reasons that when I was a head teacher or principal, parents, we were dealing with bullying, and it was something we never ignored. That when parents would tell their children, thump them, that's the way to do it, hit them back. Because actually what you're doing is you're just reinforcing the cycle.
Yes.
It's about having the self-confidence to actually be able to stand in your power and to a bully say, I'm not going to take it. And that's true as an adult, whether you actually remove yourself or you make a formal complaint if you're in a work scenario. It's about being able to stand in your power and say no more.
Yeah, because if we go to sort of the natural world, there are many standoffs in the natural world between animals, one another. Within hierarchies and all this sort of dominance equates to survival and all this sort of thing. But most of nature has a sort of a dance that is very much about demonstrating power before actual physical hurt begins to happen.
it gets to a certain point, and then it's about protecting the genetics when it comes to the ultimate.
Yes.
We as human beings aren't in that situation.
No. The samurai have a fantastic phrase, which I'm probably going to mangle, but is, I think, the art of battle without battling, and it is all about being in one's power sufficiently so that your enemy really understands your capabilities before you've even come to blows.
And that's where using archetypes as if you're not very confident, can work very well, where you stand in the energy of a royal or a warrior, but warrior in the sense of don't even think about messing with me.
Yeah.
And it's all about body language, and over 50% of our communication is body language.
Yeah.
But I think one of the biggest areas of our life where we give our power away is about how we think about ourselves and how we talk to ourselves. The biggest bullies of most people are not external. The biggest bullies of most people are themselves.
Yes.
They beat themselves up, they belittle themselves, they do themselves down.
Yes.
And that's much more powerful than anything anybody else can do from the external.
Yeah, because it's hidden, and you know, you wouldn't. Some of the things that I have heard myself say to myself in my head, I think I would never have the guts to go up to another person and say that to anybody.
Well, I don't think it's so much about the guts. I think most of us would not treat other people in the same way we treat ourselves.
Yeah, you would recognise the
that was inappropriate,
the rudeness of the words.
Yes.
And prevent yourself, because you understand the societal danger of appearing to be so rude. And yet, when it comes to dealing with yourself,
we are
no barriers.
Humans are, generally speaking, their worst critics.
Yes.
And it's so damaging, because each time that you do that, you're chipping away at your power. You know, it's just disintegrating, as if you've got a piece of pottery in front of you, and you're hammering it with a hammer.
There's a good example of how that actually, you know, manifests in a dangerous way.
Yes.
One of the aspects of dangerous way. There was some studies done on people who had chronic long-term illnesses, and they needed to take regular pharmaceutical drugs in order to keep on top of the condition or whatever they had. And the vast majority of them would forget, inverted commas, just wouldn't be consistent about it. And they took that study of people, and they compared how many of these same people had pets who had similar life-threatening chronic illnesses and who had to have regular medicine. And they found that the same people who were forgetting to take their own medicine would religiously hand over, dose their pets and maintain their pets. And when sort of delving into the psychology of it essentially, the simple answer was that the human knew all of the unworthiness that they felt inside, all of the, you know, I'm a bad person, I can't do this,
I'm not worthy.
They knew it because it's inside them, but their pet was absolutely unconditionally loved. And they never thought of their pet as having any bad things. It was just down to, you know, if their cat constantly killed birds, it wasn't evil, it was just being a cat. All this sort of stuff. So it came down to, well, my pet deserves to be looked after and kept.
I don't.
I'm not sure I do. And I think that's a really sort of external manifestation of the bullying and the power handing over that we do to our internals.
And I find it quite interesting, if you look at very young children have none of that. The world is, they see the world as a positive place, they see themselves as loved,
innately connected with it,
absolutely,
and just as much right to be here.
They're not comparing, you know, does my bottom look big in this nappy, or I've fallen down 43 times this morning, therefore I'm a failure. But there is a point where we make stories up about ourselves, and if we're going to do that, we're going to be the author of our own story. Well, let's at least give ourselves a great part. Rather than being the broken, inadequate person that often not all the time, but there are times when that's triggered, and that can be really destructive, particularly in terms of stepping into your power.
Yes.
Another area of when we give our power away is when we put everybody else's priorities before our own.
Yeah.
That we find it hard to say no because we don't want to let people down, and we don't want to feel the guilt that comes with that.
Yes.
And I think when you step into your power, it is recognizing that if you look after yourself, I'm not talking about being indulgent, but if you care for yourself as you would for a valued friend or pet,
yes,
you'll be in a position to do more for people than if you run yourself ragged, deal with everybody else first. And I have to say, this is a particularly challenging one for me. And I haven't cracked it yet. You know, if I see somebody in need, then my instinct is, even if I've got lots to do, is to go and help them. And then I'm burning the midnight oil and you know, finding that I'm exhausted and so on.
Yeah.
And I think everybody will have certain ways of being that are their habitual patterns.
Yes.
And it's being aware is the first important stage, because you can't do anything about it if you are unaware.
Yeah.
But I wonder, you know, in a whole range of situations, how often are the people who are seeing, hearing this, actually recognise that they're handing their power away?
Yes.
That they are belittling themselves, or even from the point of view of underestimating what they're capable of. Because another area I believe that many people give their power away is in the fear of being uncomfortable, stepping out of their comfort zone. They stay stuck in that very safe but limited world. That they have the power, the capacity to be so much more. But in that worrying about, oh, what will it be like? I'm a bit frightened, I'm a bit anxious. They have no idea of what they're capable of.
I was hearing a story about a young gentleman who is absolutely consumed with fear of failure. To the point where he does not have a life, really. He leads a very, you know, never leaves the house. You know, this sort of extreme sense of anxiety. And apparently he was heard to comment about the fact that he would like to be able to be forced to join the army, which seems extremely counterintuitive for a highly anxious individual to want to go into such a rough, tough, very male,
structured,
very. And when I say male, I mean really sort of, you know, that masculine energy of, you know, warrior, sort of thing. And when questioned further about, you know, really, his response was, well, then I would get bullied into doing something, Kelly.
So I'm handing my power and the responsibility over to you in order to make me brave.
Now, you had to hand it to this young man. He was at least being honest and open about it, his emotions, in a way that a lot of people wouldn't even be able to identify that dynamic going on.
But
it does sound crazy.
But isn't it sad, though, that he is so divorced from his sense of being enough and having the power to be or do whatever he chose, that the only way forward he could see was for somebody else to actually be the catalyst for change?
Yeah, because, I mean, the person I was speaking to, who mentioned this young gentleman, their view was that what was driving that was this sense of what was behind all of his anxiety, which is he didn't really want to be able to accept his responsibility for his presence on the earth, and he didn't want to accept the responsibility for, you know, forging an existence. He wanted effectively to be able to say, well, you know, I was forced into this situation, and then they went on and forced me into that, and it was not really my fault, is it? You see?
But it's interesting, we talked about fear of failure. But in my experience, just as many people are fearful of success. And as a result, they stay small. And I would urge all of you think about how often are you playing small?
Yeah.
Because I believe when we are living our true purpose, when we are owning our power, then the possibilities are endless. And for me, the power falls into two very distinct but very connected arenas. One is we have to step into our personal power. That has to be the first stage.
Yeah.
Owning who we are, frailties, faults and all. And then work on being the best version of ourselves that we can be, whatever that may look like. To be prepared to overcome our fears, to recognise how often we sabotage ourselves.
And forgive ourselves our mistakes.
And absolutely, life is a learning journey. That's what we're here for, is to learn.
Yeah.
And from the moment we arrive on this earth, we're born until we die, we have the opportunity and we have the responsibility, I believe, to learn. And the interesting thing for me is how often we fear getting things wrong. Actually, we're getting things different. But that's when we learn. And the power that we have is to take each opportunity and to look for what can we learn from it.
Yeah.
And when we struggle, when things are difficult, how do we make lemonade out of the lemons that we're handed? That's when we develop resilience, strength, power, and a capacity to grow that doesn't happen when we are not challenged in any way.
So you and I were talking last night about the metaphor of the butterfly emerging from
brilliant
the
one,
weren't we? Where the observing human is looking at this nature's fight, and the human thinks, oh, poor little butterfly, it's stuck. Oh no, because obviously it is quite a struggle to break free the cocoon, and they think, oh, I know best. I have the power. I can do this. So they tear the cocoon
because they want to help.
They wanted to help. They think poor butterfly is struggling, but the butterfly does not fly as the human had hoped. The butterfly falls and is unable to fly. Just splat on the floor. It lands, and of course, the point about that process in nature is that the butterfly needs the struggle in order to really pump blood into its wings in order to be able to fly. And in trying to shortcut it or prevent suffering, this person effectively disabled the butterfly's ability to fly. And I think that is another power play that people do. And
it's done with the very best intentions.
That
parents do it so often to their children. Teachers do it.
Yes.
Bosses do it.
Yes.
To people in their team. That they don't give them the opportunity to grow.
Yes.
Partly because they're worried about keeping themselves things right and keeping the power. But also in that they don't want people to struggle.
Well, it is painful to see other people struggle.
It is, and I'm not suggesting we set people up to struggle. That's a different thing. But I do think that you have to allow people the opportunity to get things wrong in a safe environment.
And that's particularly true, I think, of when you're a parent to children. And I've been approached by a number of parents over the years who are fundamentally trying to sort out their children's issues. And, say my daughter has fallen out with theirs, and it happens. She's not doing anything extreme like bullying. It's just the
day-to-day ebb and flow of friendships,
especially teenage girl friendships. So, and they try to intervene, and I totally understand the urge to stop the suffering and to try to sort it out, but it always backfires. It never resolves the issue.
And in my experience of parents is often when the parents are at odds with one another, the children are their back as best friends. And
because that's the struggle they have to go through in order to figure out how you get on with all of this other wash of humanity. And if you try to sort of do it for them, they're just learning that they go to mum and mum sorts it. Well, not when mum is passed and you're an 80-year-old person still living on the planet and not able to function because mum always used to sort it out for you.
Before we go on to the other power play, I just want to ask all of you who are watching and listening to this, think about the relationships you have and think about the power base. Do you hand your power, or are you the one who has the power and that you are not encouraging the other person to take their power? And remember, power is not about I'm more powerful than you.
No.
If I'm in my power and you're in your power fully, then we are both powerful beings. This is not about power and dominion. It's about win-win. It's about each person owning their own individual power.
Because people will talk about power as if it's a finite resource in the universe.
And it's not.
And some sources of power are.
Yes, but personal power isn't. The more you engage in owning your personal power, the more it grows.
Yes, absolutely. It's completely infinite.
Absolutely. So think about the relationships, but also think about the relationship you have with you and how often you belittle your power. But also, a third area is think about the situations which tip you into either stepping up into your power or actually retreating away from your power. But once you are owning your power, I think, or even on the way, for me the next big thing is to recognize that we are all connected and that our power, a big part of that is how we can support and be of service in this world. Our power to leave the world in a better place than when we got to it.
Yes.
Our power over the environment, our power over every choice that we make has an impact.
Yes.
And if you look at the world at the moment, it's never been more divided, in my opinion. That we have fake news that we can't tell whether what we're watching or reading is real or not. We have a situation where we have the capacity to destroy whole countries at the press of a button. We have a situation where people are living in fear. I was watching a programme last night with Miss Dooley. And she was in Stacey Dooley. She was in Chicago, where there are tens of murders a week. And it's seen as normal. That what can you do? That's how it is. And whole communities live in fear because it's not just the gang members who get shot, but completely innocent people who get caught up in all this, who have no desire to be part of it. And so for me, a big part of our responsibility on this earth is to manage and own our own power, but to use our power in a positive and constructive way in the world. Now, there are lots of people who will think, but I'm only one. How can I manage to do that? But you can do it in every interaction you have with other people. In not immediately jumping to conclusions and making assumptions about other people's motives. Or that because they're different to you, a different race, a different colour, a different religion, or in Chicago, they live on a different block, therefore they're my enemy. That actually that we own our power in a constructive and positive way. And that could be walking along the street and smiling and saying hello to somebody.
Or it could be walking along the street and being sufficient within your power to make it known that you are not, you will not play silly games, so that the lower vibrational energies can't come and attack you, so that you protect your own existence in that sense. It is, as well as searching for the positive, it is also being aware of the negative, and being balanced and accepting that sometimes we have to
deal with it. It's part of life.
Exactly.
And ultimately you choose whether you deal with it, whether you bury your head in the sand. But I think one of the most powerful examples of how the individual can make a difference is David Attenborough has been talking for decades about protecting the environment.
Mm-hmm.
When the Blue Planet program was screened,
yes,
people who had hitherto felt, what can I do about the plastic in the ocean?
mm-hmm.
What can I do about protecting whales and dolphins and so on?
Mm.
Started to organise themselves into small groups to take on projects that would in themselves make a difference.
Yes.
And there is a groundswell, I believe, across the world of people who want to say, no more. Yeah. We want to do things in a different way.
You see, I really don't get this. You hear it a lot, but whenever I hear it, I'm always really confused, you know. Oh, you know, what's the point? I'm just one person, and you know, there's so many other bigger, you know, polluters. There's so many other this, that, and the others. And I've always done but if one person, if you as a person doesn't do anything, and then the next person doesn't do anything, you know, the aliens aren't going to suddenly land and decide to clean things up. If the individual humans can't be bothered to do it, and it's all just because, well, somebody else will sort it out.
It has to start.
Who are these somebody elses?
With us, doesn't it? Everything starts with the individual.
Yes. Yeah, an individual watching a TV program who then says, I'm going to get a bunch of friends together and go and clean up the beach tomorrow.
Or I'm going to go and talk to the coffee shop that uses plastic straws.
Individual power.
Individual power. Each individual, when they connect with another individual, the power is more than two.
Yes, absolutely.
When you add another individual, the power is more than three.
Yeah.
And I believe, it's time. There's a paradigm shift. It is time for all of us to recognise our own power and to recognise that together we can be a powerful force for good.
Yes. That
we don't have to put up with all of the rubbish that we find in our planet, but also the rubbish that we get from politicians. Look what's going on in the US at the moment, with hundreds of thousands of people not being paid because of an argument between politicians and because somebody wants to put a wall up between one country and another.
Ridiculous.
Look at what's going on in the UK with politicians around Brexit.
Oh.
And we as individuals may feel that we have no power. What we can do is in our own families, in our own street, in our own community, in our own organisation, we can start to make a difference. Yes. And what I'd like to leave people with is there was an experiment done where, I think her name's Nina Taggart, I ought to look it up because I was part of the experiment.
Yes.
She got people around the world meditating for 24 hours on a rolling program. It's like a relay.
Yeah, yeah.
And the meditation was sending an intention, was to Chicago as it happened, to send love and peace for 24 hours.
Yeah.
Nothing was said to the authorities. But when all the statistics were looked at for that 24 hours, the number of murders had reduced, the number of violent acts, robberies, of domestic abuse had actually reduced.
Yeah.
Why? Because there was a positive intention being sent with love by a whole range of people.
Yes.
And I think, energetically, we can send out messages, whether that's through our body language or whether through our thoughts, that can collectively make a huge difference.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we're pretty well at the end of today, and I would say thank you very much for joining us. Please share this with people if you've found it interesting and of help. Recognise your personal power. If you want to know more, there's loads of stuff on the website, which is genuinely with the hyphen and the word you.com. You'll find lots of free stuff. You'll also find the Thrive Tribe that you can become a member if you want to be part of a positive group who want to make a difference. And also you can see both all our books, Rachel's The Point of Me and a whole range of my books, and you can pick up a free copy of Thriving Not Surviving, the 5 secret ways, the pathways to happiness, success and fulfillment. So thanks very much for joining us. It's genuinely-you.com, and look forward to seeing you next week. Thanks very much. Bye-bye now.